Call to order this Monday, October 19th, 2020 meeting of the Ellsworth City Council. First item, or second item, Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So, rules of order, and just to read this, in accordance with an act to implement provisions necessary to the health, welfare, and safety of the citizens of Maine in response to the COVID-19 public health emergency, as enacted to read Section G-11 MRSA, Section 403-A, public proceedings through remote access during declaration of state of emergency due to COVID-19. The meeting will be held live at 1 City Hall Plaza in the City Hall Council chambers, with only the allowable number of participants according to the governor's executive orders. Citizens may email questions and public comments on the public hearing agenda items as well as any other items this evening to myself at dhamilton@ellsworthmaine.gov. Throughout the duration of the meeting, I will be checking the email frequently. The meeting is being broadcast live on the City of Ellsworth, Maine Facebook page and YouTube page, as well as recorded and made available on Spectrum Channel 1303. Item 4, adoption of minutes from the following meeting of the Ellsworth City Council, 9/21/2020 special council meeting, and 9/21/2020 regular monthly meeting.
Mr. Chairman, move to approve the minutes of the special council meeting of 9/21/2020 and table the minutes of the regular monthly meeting on that date.
We have a motion,
Second.
a second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous. By the way, I should mention, I can't remember if I said this. All councilors are present. Did I say that? Now I have. All right. Item 5, city manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, councilors, members of the public. I do have a couple of announcements real quick to get to tonight. First of all, I'd just like to start out by saying I'm proud to announce that City Hall is officially back open as of today. It was our first day opening the doors back up to the public, Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. So folks can come in. When they do come into City Hall, they'll notice that there's a receptionist who's placed in the lobby, and folks are asked to check in with the receptionist, and this person will be able to help you expedite what you're here in City Hall to achieve. We are also requiring that folks wear masks, when they come into City Hall, and they observe the 6-foot social distancing. We will be limiting the number of folks who are allowed in City Hall at any one time to avoid an overcrowding situation. But so far today went very smoothly. We didn't have any issues with folks having to wait for long periods of time or overcrowding in the downstairs portion of City Hall. So I anticipate that things will just get better and better as we get used to this new process. So also, I just wanted to make a couple of other quick announcements. One is we have the election coming up, of course, on November 3rd, which hopefully everyone is well aware of. The polls will be opening this year at 7 a.m. To make sure that we can accommodate all those who want to come out and vote in person. We also will be closing City Hall that day to routine business outside of the election, and this is to allow for maximum number of voters to be in the building at one time, and masks will be strongly encouraged for voting. We will be asking voters to come to the entrance off of Main Street, enter City Hall from the right-hand staircase, and exit the building from the Church Street side. And we'll have folks throughout, employees and volunteers throughout the city in helping people to navigate through these changes. Ward 1 will remain in the auditorium, which is on the 2nd floor of City Hall. Ward 2 will now be at 4 Mills Road, Your Place Community Center. Ward 3 will still be at 867 Bangor Road, and Ward 4 remains in the City Council chambers. Also, I just wanted to make a couple of announcements about things going on in the community. We have the YMCA, in conjunction with the Ellsworth Police Department, Star 97, as well as the Ellsworth Fire Department, will be holding the annual trunk or treat. It's going to be a little different than what we've had in previous years. This year it's going to be held at the YMCA parking lot on Saturday, October 31st from 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. The Y is asking that folks sign up for a time slot to come and participate in the trunk or treat with their children. There will be 15 total vehicles there to hand out candy, and the folks who are there to distribute the candy will be wearing gloves and face coverings, and they will be required to place the candy in the containers for the children who are there to attend. The 15 different associations throughout the city will be there, and those vehicles will be adequately spaced to provide social distancing and to not crowd the group together. And finally, the Grand, they're also having a Halloween event, 4 nights only, Friday, October 23rd, and the 30th, Saturday, October 24th, and the 31st is a Grand Terror Theater Act 2, Enter If You Dare. And they also have a whole host of precautions put in place, COVID-related things, and I encourage everyone who's interested to reach out to the Grand to find out the more specifics on that event. And that's all I have tonight, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
I attended the Recreation Committee meeting on last Wednesday, and we had Aaron from Frenchman Bay Conservancy discuss plans to improve and expand the Riverwalk Trail. He also discussed plans for the new Frenchman Bay Conservancy Forest, which will be located by the Sunrise Trail. Our new city planner, Teresa, gave an update on our senior playground that's going to be installed in the spring, pending council approval, using locally raised money. She also discussed the ongoing pedestrian trail study that's going on High Street. And Nick Sorrow was still looking for a place for the dog park. He thinks he found a promising location. We'll have more to come on that hopefully soon. Shane from the YMCA talked about the trunk or treat. They still are looking for sponsors for trunks, and if you would like to help out, call Jeannie at 667-3086. He also talked about the youth sports that are going on right now. And the ice rink will be put up this year again, and the boards are going up, and the tarp is going down on the 26th of October. Nick Turner reminded us that the Grand is doing the haunted house, as we heard. Make your reservations now. We're in the middle of planning the Christmas parade for this year, and we're looking for a few good floats. So contact Teresa Beal. And Thelma, I'm sorry, I apologize, Thelma Beal. I had Teresa on my mind. I asked about closing the basketball courts, and Lisa from the city said that it's on her to-do list, and she'll be able to close them up when the curtains are dry. That's it.
So I just want to hop back for a second for the manager's report, and I just wanted to make one comment. I know preparations for the elections, and I just wanted all the citizens to understand that it's an incredible amount of work. And Heidi Grindle has put a lot of effort. This is a very complicated process, a lot of legal pieces. I know there were a lot of other staff involved that have been helping to get the preparation so that we have a smooth election. And obviously, every election is important, and the only reason it runs smoothly is because of the hours and hours and hours that are put into it. So just wanted to publicly recognize you for that effort, and I know how hard you work on it. Thank you. Were there any other questions on the city manager's report? Councilor Blanche.
Mr. Chairman, just a question on the process of voting. Voters are coming in the front door, leaving via the back door. Handicapped, how is that going to be handled?
The same way it was in July. If they are in need of coming in the back door, we have staff members there that can let them in that door. They're actually leaving from this door and going out, so that leaves the middle door free for anybody requiring those services. We're just asking that people respect the need for that and leave those parking spots available.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. So other committee reports, item 6.
The Harbor Committee met, and pleased to report that the harbor is shut down. It was a pretty good year, all things being equal. weather cooperated. We did a really good job selling gas, and the diesel sales were in pretty good shape. Overall, we generated $24,000 in fees and so forth, so things are kind of looking up. We've got a fairly long way to go to pay for the gas tanks, but we'll get there someday. I'd like to welcome Patrick Downey, is the newest member of the Harbor Commission. And the desire of the commission to have the harbor dredged, it's desperately in need of dredging, is moving along at a very slow pace. The biggest concern is how to get rid of the dredgings that may have a little bit high level of some pollutants in it. But we'll see how that goes. They're still working on it. And that's about it.
Other committee reports. Councillor Grindle.
From the Personnel Committee, the Ellsworth City Council is inviting citizens, businesses, and organizations to a public meeting that's going to be held here at City Hall on this Wednesday, October 21st at 6:30. The purpose of this meeting is to gather information regarding what the community believes the major issues and challenges are facing Ellsworth, and to express what qualities, education, background, and experience the new city manager should possess to successfully move the city and to meet the issues and challenges facing Ellsworth. Don Garish from Eaton Peabody Consulting Group will facilitate the meeting. The City Council encourages participation at this meeting by using the Zoom platform for all who would like to express their opinions. If you're unable to utilize the platform, limited seating will be available by reservation in the council chambers, and there's overflow available in the auditorium. To reserve a seat, please contact Tony Dyer at tdyer@ellsworthmaine.gov or 669-6603.
Thank you. So I want to give an update on the ad hoc committee that was endorsed by the council at the last meeting regarding crosswalks. So for lack of a better term, we'll call it the ad hoc crosswalk committee. This committee will be looking at, and this is part of the discussion to flesh this out a bit, but the agenda, as we talked about, is to look at some of the issues that came up in the discussion last time.
Join the meeting.
Safety risks, if altering crosswalks, reviewing existing ordinances related to sidewalks that might apply to crosswalk situations, looking at the development of criteria for approving or denying a request as they come forward. And we'll certainly be looking at making sure that the charter is clear so that the group can form. Councillors Miller, Blanche, and myself will be participating in that, as well as, at this point, Kerry Cutney and Ben Snow. And there may be other individuals added as we move forward. Any questions or comments? Okay, so we'll be getting that committee up and running probably first of next month, into this month if we can, but probably first of next month. We'll report back. Any other committee reports? All right, moving to item 7, citizens' comments. This is the portion of the agenda where citizens can make comments on anything they wish. If it's on the agenda, you can comment at that time when the agenda comes up. We'll take those discussions. Anybody that's listening that wants to send in a comment, I'll read it now. If it's on an agenda item, you can send it in and we'll read it during that portion of the agenda. So I will open the floor for citizens' comments.
I'd like to make a comment. As some of you already know, this is my final city council meeting, and it doesn't seem possible as many years has gone by. I want to sincerely thank my fellow citizens for the privilege of allowing me to take part in the running of this city for the last 17 years. I have to read this because I don't want to screw it up. I've been able to see a lot of positive growth, from anything from the Harbor Park to the Jackson Lab, to all the other things that groups of people have done. They've promoted various programs and started a lot of activities in Ellsworth. There's been some really tremendous growth in this city, and I was very glad to be part of it. My ancestors arrived here in Ellsworth in 1763, and thank God they decided to stay here from one generation to another. It troubles me a little bit that I may be the last of my family line to actually live here, and God knows I love this city. And also, I'm pretty glad, given what we've been through recently, to be in Hancock County, and particularly Ellsworth, over the last 6 months. I feel pretty good. I taught at Ellsworth High School for 30 years, and I enjoyed teaching all kinds of things, mostly history and government. But I really did enjoy teaching civics, and I fully understand that that's not everybody's favorite subject. And I was often let in on that secret. I would hand out the books when the school started in September and explain that it was a description of the goals of the framers of the Constitution to create what amounted to an experiment in representative democracy. Many of the scholarly people back then said, it'll never work. But here we are 233 years later, and we're still going strong. Why are we still going strong? Well, they built a very flexible document that allows for changes in our culture over the years. It gives us the ability to deal with all those forces that would otherwise tear us apart. I have to say that during my tenure on the council, I've learned a great deal about the process of government. It's a lot different than the textbook. When the students got their books, I would remind them that it was an idealistic government that they created. Maybe it would have been better if there'd been a few more women on the committee that created it. Things might have turned out a little better, but they were the founding fathers back then. For most of our everyday concerns, local government is the most important government for everyday things. It is us. We are the government. Right now, we are the government. To understand this government, we have to pay attention. You have to read the news or follow it on the radio or television. But you have to take part in the process if you can. There's so much more to running this city than most people would ever guess. That's what I've learned. Why does it take so long to get something done? There's a lot to it. And some of you out there, maybe you'll run for this office someday. I encourage you to. But I'm sure as heck gonna miss it. Because I love the city, and I really have had a good time doing this. So thank you again, people of Ellsworth.
We'll come back to you in a minute. We'll come back to you in a minute.
Oh, dear.
You just sit there, relax. Make a motion. All right, I do not see any comments coming through. I would remind everybody that is listening, if you send an email and I'm not reading it, please send it again. I've said this before, sometimes it goes into spam or something and I don't see it, Jason monitors as well, but I just want to make sure that if you've sent something and you're not hearing it, then please resend. So with that, no other citizens' comments? All right, we will move on to item number 8, presentation of awards. Since I've been these out, I will put this on. Chad Brackett. Ellsworth proudly presents a certificate of service to Chad Brackett in recognition of your 5 years of service as equipment operator for the Ellsworth Public Works Department. Your devotion to duty and loyalty to the community have contributed to the improvement of the city of Ellsworth. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to thank him also for his service as harbor master. You did a great job.
Thank you, sir.
Jen Merchant. In recognition of your 5 years of service for your various capacities, from Deputy Finance Director to Finance Director for the City of Ellsworth, your devotion to duty and loyalty to the community have contributed to the improvement of the City of Ellsworth. I'm not initiating the handshakes. These are,
Don't, I'm supposed to hit elbows.
I know. Sean Merchant. This is for 5 years of service as a police officer.
He's in December. No, December.
Let's see. This one is empty. So I don't know. That was just a trick. If I look confused, I am. And that one's empty. All right.
There were others.
Yeah.
Don't you just hate it when there's a snafu?
That's all I got.
You need the agenda.
No, I have it. I can recognize. And we're going to pretend there's a certificate in here. So, Kelly Gankos. Is Kelly here? Kelly's being recognized for 15 years of service with the Ellsworth Public Library. And Jenny DeRice for 20 years of service. Is Jenny here? No. For 20 years with the Ellsworth Tax Department. And Robert Dorr for 10 years with the Ellsworth Fire Department. So congratulations to them. And I apologize for the little, I got confused. We shall move on. Unfinished business. The consent agenda, all items with an asterisk are considered to be routine and will be enacted by one motion. There'll be no separate discussion on those items. Let me back up. I apologize because I didn't write it on here. There are 2 more recognitions that we would like to make this evening. First, is for David Cole, who is the former city manager. We'd like to present this to you. Presented to David Cole in grateful appreciation for your commitment and 5 years of dedicated service. Your significant contribution to the city of Ellsworth led to the improvement of the community at large. And city manager 2015 to 2020. Thank you.
I'll miss you, each and every one.
And who I think is a very well-deserved recognition for somebody who has served on the council for 17 years, John Moore. We'd like to present this to you. Presented to John L. Moore with deepest appreciation for your outstanding leadership and devoted service to the city of Ellsworth, City Council 11-2003 to 11-2020. to councillors.
Can I say one more thing?
You're going to anyway.
I'm going to anyway. I have been tremendously impressed with all the people that I've worked with in City Hall, all the people who work at City Hall. It's a great crew. They keep things going smoothly, and I've enjoyed every one of them. Okay, now I'm done.
Yeah, there you go. Councillor Blanche.
I just want to say, I met Mr. Moore, I believe it was September of 1974, starting my senior year of high school. I believe I had you in a class, I believe it was psychology. Would that be correct?
Yes.
It's been, 46 years. I can finally admit, John, what a trip that class was. And to get reconnected with John when I came on the council in 2013, it has grown into a very good friendship. A friendship that I treasure now and will always treasure. And to drive that point home, for him to entrust me with one of his beloved Eleanor's puppies means a whole lot. And I want to thank him for his service to Ellsworth. Not everybody will do that. He stepped up. Thank you.
I like your dog, too.
Want to say anything else?
No.
You really are done?
I don't want to make it any worse than I already.
All right, so the consent agenda, now that I can see both pages, we do not have any items on the consent agenda. So we will move right into new business. Item number 9, public hearing and action on the applications for the following licenses, and I'm assuming everything's in order. So the first one, Louise Joy and Thomas Joy, DBA Edward Joy and Sons, 129 North Street, for renewal of the city junkyard automobile graveyard permit. So this is a public hearing. I'll open the public hearing. Anybody that wishes to comment on that, and I will take emails as well. Just pause for a minute, there's a delay. Seeing and hearing no comments, I will close the public hearing. Councilors?
Mr. Chairman, move approval of the request of Edward Joy and Sons for renewal of their license.
Second.
I have a motion and second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous. James B. Card, second DBA Jimbo's Junkin, 62 Kylie's Way, for renewal of a city junkyard automobile graveyard permit. This is a public hearing. I'll open the public hearing. Ask for any comments. Seeing no comments, hearing no comments, I'll close the public hearing. Councilors?
Mr. Chairman, move approval of Jimbo's Junkin request for renewal of their license.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Councillor Phillips and I remember when Jim Card first came to the council for getting a junkyard, and it was kind of an interesting uphill fight for a while, but everything's run pretty smoothly over the last, how many years ago was it? Yeah.
It's worked well.
Any other comments? All those in favor? Unanimous. Item 10, presentation of the annual update by Catherine Longley, Chief Operating Officer for the Jackson Laboratory, sponsored by myself. And I believe.
Good evening, Chair Hamilton and members of the council. We're so pleased to be
with you tonight. I'm sorry we can't be with you in person. We were last at the council at a finance committee meeting last August with David Cole, and I think it was August 2nd, so it's been a little bit over a year, and we very much look forward to speaking with you tonight. I just wanted to let you know we are very pleased that during this unprecedented time, we've been able to continue with our construction at the Charles Hewitt Center. We've been able to continue hiring in Ellsworth, and we're proud to be a major employer in the city of Ellsworth. In addition, we're very pleased that Ellsworth is a home to so many of our employees at the lab, and that relationship with the community is very important to us and to our employees. We're also very grateful for the support we receive from you, and we value this very important partnership. The reason we're here tonight is to share an annual update with you, which we hope to do again with you in person next time. And it's with great pleasure that I introduce Leah Graham, who's going to share our annual report with you this evening. Leah is a very special employee at the lab. She is the manager of governmental affairs, focusing on Maine relationships. In addition, she is a PhD geneticist. So we have both a scientist and a government relations person with you today. And her background in science was working in the area of Alzheimer's disease and the aging brain in the lab of Dr. Gareth Howell. So at this point, I'll pass it on to Leah, who'll share some information with you, and then we'll both be available to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Katie. Let me share my screen really quick and make sure you can see. Can you see this view? I don't know how this was doing this earlier here. There we go. There, can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. So thank you very much, Katie, and it's wonderful to be here with you all tonight. And let me get started. Oh, also, if anyone needs to contact me for whatever reason, my email and phone number are here. So I'm going to talk briefly about our response to COVID-19. Jax has definitely had to change a lot of what we normally do over the course of the past 8 months, and we'll give you a little view into that. And then we'll talk about our 2019 Economic Impact Report, and then just an update on the Hewitt Center and Phase 2. So first, what we've been working on for the last 8 months in both scientific efforts and research efforts, as well as operational for our employees. We've continued to do our research. Jax has been deputized an essential employer, so we have been allowed to stay open for the past 8 months, even in the beginning of the pandemic. We sent probably a third of our employees to work from home, but a good portion of our employees were continued to stay on campus, either in shifts, working on some of our scientific efforts. We quickly expanded our clinical lab in Connecticut to do COVID-19 PCR testing, first for the state of Connecticut, but we've also worked with partners across Maine, including some hospitals and the University of Maine and Maine Maritime. We've been doing their COVID-19 screening for staff and students. Internally, for employee and operations, we assembled a cross-functional pandemic task force very quickly. And this really was to keep operational and as critical infrastructure. And this included making sure that the workplace was safe. And we did this through shift work, remote work. So again, I said we sent a good amount of employees to work from home. We quickly got masks to our employees, and we continue to wear masks at work. We restricted travel, and that has continued. And we also have restricted visitor access to only essential and necessary visits. Again, no visitors on campus, and we've restricted business travel for employees. And we're also screening our employees who are on campus for COVID-19. So we have a pretty robust asymptomatic testing program, and we work with both MDI Hospital and Northern Light Maine Coast to have that for our employees. So just to give you guys a bit of insight since the last time that we were together, this is our economic numbers up until the end of 2019. So again, it's October now, so it's a little outdated, but it's good to keep you guys up to date. So our FY19 economic impact for the state of Maine was $732 million. We spent indirectly $172 million, and this equals about 1,000 or 1,100 jobs created. We paid our employees in Maine $136 million. $75 million was spent on capital investments. Maine fees and taxes generated from our employees, benefits and salaries. We received $79 million from the NIH in grant funding last year. We have 17, as of December 31st, 2019, we had 1,736 employees. And we use 569 Maine vendors, what we used in 2019. And we're the 15th largest employer in Maine as of Q4. And just to get a little bit more in depth, we can talk about our economic impact in Ellsworth. So we have 326 JAX employees that live in the city of Ellsworth. We hired 280 new employees for both to work in Bar Harbor and Ellsworth last year. We had hired 73 employees for the Hewitt Center in Ellsworth as of last year. I couldn't get an update in time for this meeting as to where we stand now, but I believe the last time I checked, we have 91 or 92 employees working in Ellsworth. We bought goods and services from 48 Ellsworth vendors last year. We contributed $50,000 for a voluntary contribution to the municipal city budget. We spent $390,000 in water, sewer, taxes, permitting, voluntary contribution, all to the city of Ellsworth. And then we have some visitor data. So we have calculated by our economists that we contributed about 56,000 visitor days to the Hancock County region, which equates to about $14 million in visitor spending. And we have about 150 organizations where JAX employees volunteer their time. And this is just a breakdown of where our employees are living, and you can see that number of 326 that live in Ellsworth. We have about equal in Bar Harbor, 87 in Trenton, and 173 living on the rest of MDI. And we have employees from all across Maine, north and south. So. And then just to end, we wanted to give you an update on the Phase 2 construction of the Charles E. Hewitt Center in Ellsworth. Construction was initially suspended due to the pandemic in March. But we have since gotten contractors back on campus, and much like employees, any on-site contractor are required to follow safety guidelines as the same as our employees, so social distancing, masking, and we also offer COVID-19 screening before contractors can come onto campus, and we do that through Northern Light Work Health in Ellsworth at Resort Way. And then phase 2, even with the suspension of construction early on in the pandemic, is on track for completion by the end of the month. So that's really great news. That has created a lot more additional mouse room space, but also a new cafeteria, and I believe a gym space. Katie can correct me if I'm wrong. I'll stop sharing, and if you guys have any questions, please feel free. Katie and I are both here to answer them.
Councilors, any questions? I don't see any questions, but thank you very much for the update. That's good information. Is there any way you could email that presentation to the city so that we can have that available?
Absolutely.
Great, thank you.
Yep. You're welcome. Thank you.
Is it possible to get investment to date in Ellsworth through phases 1 and 2? How much you've invested in construction?
Yes, so the phase that's being done now is about $74 million, and the next phase will be, if we get board approval and we start that, it'll be another $80 million project. So I think total, that's 154. I think there's more than that we've invested, but the phase 2 and phase 3, 74 and 80. We can get you the total number of investment in the facility.
And I believe the first phase was a similar amount as well, in that 70 to 80 range. So that's almost, $250 million.
Council Blanchett?
Leah, in the last year when you and I talked, we had a kind of a private conversation on your previous studies with Dr. Howell on Alzheimer's and nutrition. And I'm just curious, while we have you right here, has there been any update on that, any new information come out of that you're aware of?
I didn't catch all of that, but I think it was in reference to Gareth's work on Alzheimer's and exercise and diet. That the lab has continued that work, and it, as you can probably guess, it is helpful to exercise and to eat well for not only your heart as it is for your brain. So I think that that's a really important message that they're working on. A lot of their work has shifted to be even more in depth, in the sense that they want to understand what diet and exercise actually do to the immune system and the vascular system in the brain, and how those can either be beneficial or damaging. So when you have a lot of inflammation in your bloodstream, that not only is very damaging to other organs, but it's very bad for your brain, and it can create a lot of inflammation. So they have been working a lot on understanding the mechanisms of that, and how you could either design treatments to be able to stop that, or understand, for people who can exercise, what is how much is beneficial, but also for those who can't exercise, what other options people have. Thank you for the question.
Thank you.
All right, well, thank you again. Item 11, public hearing and action on authorizing the city manager to enter into a 20-year bill credit agreement under the Maine Commercial and Institutional Customer Net Energy Billing Tariff Rate Credit Program, which will enable the city to purchase bill credits associated with the generation of solar power from a distributed generation solar project located in the city of Ellsworth for purposes of offsetting and lowering the cost of electricity for the city of Ellsworth and its component units. So before I open it for the public hearing, just reading that would tell me that we need some information. So I will open it up to the committee that's been involved in this and our consultants.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll just start out by just notifying you that we have George Wood, the consultant from Oak Point Energy, has called in on the Zoom, as well as Sarah Tracy, who's the attorney for Pierce Atwood, who has navigated through this process with us. And Patrick Jackson from Sunrays is also on. So they'll be an excellent resource for anyone who has any specific questions. And we also have from the committee, we have Mr. Fortier and David Cole, former city manager, served on that committee as well, and
Robert
Councillor Miller.
And
Councillor Grindle.
And Councillor Grindle, I apologize. So just real quick, I just want to give a little bit of background. This process started back in early November of 2019 with an RFP that was sent out to many different opportunities to come to bring solar to the city of Ellsworth through a lengthy process that the committee was involved in. They narrowed down eventually to one particular company, Sunrays Investment. It's based out of New Hampshire, Portsmouth, New Hampshire. It was founded in 2014. It has projects in Maine, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Vermont, and California. Their project size range from 2,000 kilowatts to 10,000 kilowatts. The two programs that we're working on in Ellsworth, one of which we're ready tonight with a contract that we're asking the City Council to authorize me to move forward with. The contract that we have tonight is the Industrial Road project, and that project is estimated to produce 3,175,000 kilowatt hours per year of electricity, and that particular project will be assigned to all of the non-school city accounts, with the exception of 2 of the school accounts, in order to consume the amount of energy that project will be producing. Construction is estimated to begin in late spring of 2020 and completion in the fall. The second project, which I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on because we're not ready to bring that contract forward yet tonight, but we're hopeful that within the next 30 days prior to the next council meeting, we'll have that project wrapped up as well. But that's a little bit smaller, estimated to produce 2,950,000 kilowatt hours per year, and that will be assigned to all of the remainder of the school accounts for the city. One thing I do just want to make abundantly clear, and I'm not going to get too into the details about it because certainly our experts can do a much better job with it than I can. But one thing I just want to make abundantly clear is that the city of Ellsworth is not actually purchasing electricity from the solar producer. The solar producer sells the electricity to the grid, and then the city is actually purchasing credits, and which then will apply those credits to the electrical bills for the city, which will in turn result in a reduction in our electrical cost. And again, that's really kind of just glazing the top of how it all works, but if folks have questions, certainly the folks on the committee and also the experts who are on the phone will do a much better job explaining it than I will. But real quickly, the Ellsworth will pay Sunrays Ellsworth 74% of the monetary value of the credits and retain 26%. Overall savings of about 20% of the total electrical bill over the 20 years of the contract. The Industrial Road project in Ellsworth is estimated to aggregate annual electricity savings is approximately $110,000. And again, those are mostly non-school accounts. The Mariahville Road project is estimated $70,000 for the 20 years. And that's again mostly the school accounts. So combined 20-year estimated savings for the city is again estimated at $3.6 million. And at that, I'm going to turn it back over to the committee or any of the councilors who may have any questions.
Councilor Kaplan.
I have a few questions. Well, I totally agree with going solar. I took the liberty of looking up where all of this was coming from. And I was just wondering, you had filed an LLC in Portland, Maine, and it was revoked. Why was that revoked? Is Woody on the phone?
Could you repeat the question a little louder, please?
I just had a few questions on the whole process. There was an LLC actually filed in Portland for Sunrays Solar Fund, Sunrays Investment Solar Fund, and it was revoked on January 15th, 2015. Why was that?
So, repeating the question to see if I have it right, you had found that an LLC had been filed in Portland, Maine for Sunrays, is that correct?
Yes, and then it was revoked on January 15th, 2015, case number 20150009DP. And my thinking is, I just want to know if we're going to go into a 20-year relationship with a company, what the history of the company is.
So I don't think Sarah and I have an answer looking at Sarah tonight, but we do have Pat Jackson on the screen. And Pat, I might ask you to turn your video on if you heard the question and answer that, please.
Yes. I'll do my best to answer that.
And you're coming a little fuzzy, Pat.
I'm not able to turn my video on right now. Can you guys hear me okay?
Can't hear you. Could you speak up a little bit?
You guys hear me any better now?
Slightly.
I'll speak loudly. I believe we started, we thought about creating an LLC for the incubator program or something of the like way back when. And we decided not to move forward with the incubator program. So we didn't move forward with the LLC, but it has no reflection of the company or our standing.
Okay.
And Pat, you are incorporated in New Hampshire, is that right?
That's correct.
Does that address your question?
Yes. So, and you said that you had planned to purchase the panels from Longi, which is a company out of China. Is there any reason we can't look at a company, or you can't look at a company in the United States to purchase the panels?
We look at all companies that are qualified.
Okay. I did look at Longi, and in June of this year, just a couple, 3 months ago, they were actually found guilty of copyright infringement against the company Hanwha for the Q-cell patents, and the International Trade Commission has also identified patent violations with their Q-cells, and they were ordered to destroy the panels that they had already installed or that they had already created in Germany. Is that going to affect this project?
I don't imagine it would, but we're happy to look into it to make sure.
Okay.
And Pat, you might speak a little bit more in depth to why you picked this particular manufacturer and panel
Sure.
versus others.
Yeah, so Longi is considered a Tier 1 manufacturer, global manufacturer. That Tier 1 list is created by Bloomberg, New Energy Finance, and they judge manufacturers of various components of solar products, including the panels. They judge it based on financial strength, on the number of projects, and Longi is a Tier 1 Bloomberg list manufacturer. That is the highest ranking. There is no tier above it. It's also a very high efficiency panel. So that means for every minute of sunlight, it produces a high percentage of kilowatt hours of electricity. And they're considered bifacial panels, which is pretty cool in that there's little spaces between the cells for the sunlight to actually go through, with the idea being that it reflects off the ground in various angles, and more electricity is captured on the backside of the panel. So all in all, it's a very high quality panel. I can't speak to the panel that was referenced in the trade law. There's a patent infringement lawsuit, but typically these manufacturers have a large amount of different models, like a car company, many different models. And the particular one that we're choosing is a very high quality module.
Thanks, Pat. And I think the council also is aware that the solar farm that would be used for the Ellsworth project is located within the city limits, although not on city property. Other questions?
Yes. Aside from the litigation, I looked at where is Longi sourcing its materials, and there's a Chinese company that they get their rare earth metals from, specifically cadmium, tellurium, etc. And that company is Wambo, and they actually own 75% of all the tellurium in the Democratic Republic of Congo, which the average citizen who's mining this stuff is making 72 cents per day, and they utilize 40,000 child slaves. That I have a problem with.
What I think we can add is those of us who worked with Ellsworth, I can't speak to the precise panel, but we did not do the diligence on the mineral sources used for the panels for the 9 companies that were proposed to work with Ellsworth. It's certainly something to be mindful of and investigate.
Other questions, comments from the council? Now, one thing I just want from the workshop that we had the other evening, I think it's worth repeating. I'll ask you, Councilor Miller, because you answered the question for me the other night. And that has to do with how solar can displace some of the traditional grid utilization and how it can impact on different populations. But you spoke to the point in terms of the fact that this project goes forward, whether we're purchasing it or participating in it. Could you just speak to that so there's some understanding in the community about the value of this particular
Yeah, you
project?
talked about the T&D costs going up as a result of maybe us buying power, but the T&D costs are going up as a result of the project that was from the state. And these credits are out there to buy, for anybody to buy, and the T&D costs are going up no matter what. So if we don't buy the credits, somebody else will buy the credits.
Thank you.
Does that address your question? The other question that came up in our discussion was when this solar array or these solar arrays or others in Maine are operating, the fuel that they're displacing most of the time is natural gas. Or in the language of those of us in the wholesale market, is that gas is on the margin. So therein is much of the value for Ellsworth in supporting the purchase of credits. It will cause this solar farm to be constructed based on this 20-year contract, and these electrons that will flow will displace generation facilities that are using natural gas. And to the T&D question, because these credits are composed in part of two parts, one is the energy and the other is T&D, meaning transmission and distribution. The T&D part is the funds flowing to Versant, formerly Emera, and the avoided costs that Ellsworth would not be paying would cause a slight increase for this particular project in T&D costs for other ratepayers. I think that was the nature of your question. Is that right?
Yes, thank you for, I just wanted everybody in the listening in to understand that point if they weren't listening the other night at the workshop.
And Sarah, feel free to add anything as we go along.
Will do.
The other, I think, important piece of information to point out is the fact that as these credits come through and gets applied to the city, we have different types of accounts in terms of the different units where the credits will be applied. Some accounts are funded through tax base, and some are the enterprise accounts. So the water and the sewer are enterprise accounts, which are paid for by fees, which are separate than the tax base. And in the water, those fees are regulated in terms of, those are set in terms of what the fees are. So as the tax credits get applied, that estimated $110,000 will get applied to those units based on what the utilization of that. So it's not all of it 100% going into accounts that are driven by the tax base. And I just think that's really important for everybody to understand on the front end. It still represents, obviously, savings for the city and the application of it and having funding available, but how it gets applied has a different meaning in terms of it's not $110,000 coming right out of the tax base, because a significant portion will be going into those enterprise accounts. Did I get that accurate in terms of?
I think roughly, and I defer to Woody on this, but probably, what do you think, Woody, 60% to 2/3 would be against tax base, and about 1/3 of the enterprise accounts, water, sewer, that kind of thing?
I'd be happy to look at that during the meeting here. I have the numbers on the spreadsheet. It's hard for me to pull that off the top of my head.
I'm just saying that the school is almost half of the load, and that's
Yeah.
all against the tax base. So you're starting out with that.
That's right.
And if I could jump in, one of the things that we've selected for this contract in terms of how we're going to allocate these credits, there's two ways you can do it, and we've selected what they call a cascading method. So we will prioritize the accounts, and they fill up the first account first, and then if there are more credits to be applied, then goes to the next account and next account. So there is discretion about how to organize that, so that if you want to put the enterprise accounts a little later, you can do that and make sure that the tax base accounts that really flow directly to the taxpayers, those are earlier. So there's some discretion there that is not something that we've really examined yet. We've been really more looking at the overall dollar amounts, but if there's a preference on priority of what gets offset first, we can certainly accommodate that.
And that's part of what I think we're requesting tonight is to allow Glenda discretion with our input and the solar committee on the sequencing of accounts, such that those with the highest value per kilowatt hour, those with the largest dollars per year, are the ones that are addressed early, with the goal of maximizing Ellsworth savings.
Right. As this is a public hearing, I will open the public hearing to provide opportunities for other comments or questions from the public. Again, if you're listening and you have a question or a comment, please email me at dhamilton@ellsworthmaine.gov. So I'll open it up to see if there's any comments from anybody
Hello?
here.
Do you guys have a deregulation plan in place, like when the?
Can you step up just so that way everybody can hear your
Oh,
question?
hi,
If you
can
can
you
go,
hear me?
go up to the microphone if you.
Oh, there's a microphone, oh my goodness.
Just if you could say your name.
Hi,
And,
Jared Gillette, and this is just purely research based, but is there like a regulation plan for deregulating after 20 years? I mean, who pays for that when those things no longer pump out sun juice or whatever it is? Just my question.
Sure, I'm happy to answer that. Like,
Just make the point that this, this.
He tried to talk.
Oh, Patrick.
Pat is-
Go ahead, Pat.
Can't hear him.
yeah, it's a great question. The City of Ellsworth Planning Board, through the permitting process, has required of us to have a decommissioning bond in place prior to the start of construction, so that there will always be funds in place to deconstruct and remove the solar facility at the end of its useful life. And that's essentially to protect both the city as well as the landowner.
Did you heard that?
Yep, thank you.
I'd also note that it was not only approved by the planning board, but there was a bond put in place to back that up. So that's all taken care of.
Okay, thank you. Other comments or questions? Don't see anything coming in via email at this point.
So
Scott?
just to sum up my.
How do I raise my hand here?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, Gary Fortier, can I hear you? Hear me?
We can.
I think it's important for the council and the members of the public to understand that one paragraph in this agreement goes against everything we as city councilors have ever wanted to do. But we have to do it. We give up a sovereign immunity in a court. If we mess up this agreement, they can sue us, and we can't use sovereign immunity. That is, our bond counsel is fine with it. Our lawyers are fine with it. Sarah has negotiated it, but it has to come out in public that we're doing that. So I'd ask Sarah to comment on that. Thank you.
Sure. So, one of the things that was a little bit in play when we were doing the negotiation is Sunrays wanted to make sure that if they are making the commitment to build this solar facility based upon Ellsworth's commitment to buy the credits and to pay Sunrays for those credits that come out of the facility, that Ellsworth would make good on that commitment and wouldn't later use sovereign immunity to basically as a shield from being sued for a breach of contract. The language that we negotiated, it was much more broad, and so we negotiated it down such that Ellsworth is basically saying we waive sovereign immunity just for contract claims. So if there are other types of claims, that this agreement doesn't speak to that. But if Ellsworth breaches the contract, Sunrays can take Ellsworth to court for that breach of contract. Now, of course, it will be like any litigation. Sunrays would have to prove that Ellsworth actually breached the contract. So The first thing is you're in control of this provision because you can decide whether or not to breach the contract. So you're in control of whether it's ever invoked to a large extent. But secondly, if it does go to litigation, then you have all the defenses that other businesses who enter into contracts have to defend themselves against an action. The only thing you don't have is we are a government and you can't sue us because we're a government. And, you know, in consultation with the city manager, you know, it may be unusual, but we discussed that it was consistent with Ellsworth's intent, which is that you're making a commitment, it is a 20-year agreement, and you intend to abide by that commitment and not use, you know, sovereign immunity as a shield. So yes, I say I'm glad you brought it up, that that's in there, that is a waiver, and that is something that you do need as a council to affirm tonight that you are in fact intending to waive that, because it is a little bit unusual, but it's not inconsistent with the overall commitment.
Thank you.
Councilor Kaplan, my apologies.
Yes, so to sum up my concern with the specific company, not the project as a whole, but the specific company and their utilization of a company in China rather than a company in the United States, is that that company in China, specifically on June 18th, 2020, was found guilty of infringing on patent violations and intellectual property violations, and was ordered to destroy the panels that they had already produced. Even if those panels were in somebody's solar farm, they are ordered to remove them and destroy them because they didn't enter into a licensing agreement with the actual owner of the patent, which was Hanwha Q-Cells. Additionally, you have a company that violated somebody's intellectual property rights, and they source their metals from a questionable organization, Wanbo, which owns 74% of all of the natural minerals in the Democratic Republic of Congo, and they utilized 40,000 child slaves in order to produce that, to mine for those precious metals or those rare earth metals, in order to produce the metals to make their batteries and their solar panels. You know, it's most of the tellurium that's produced in the world is owned by China. And if they have companies that are utilizing slave labor, and even if it's not slave labor, they pay their average employee makes 72 cents per day. Their kids will never go to school. Knowing the human rights cost of this, I just can't get on board knowing that, yeah, we're going to save some money on our electric bill while you got kids over across the ocean that are never even going to go to school. And they can't leave. They're orphans. I saw videos, kids as young as 4 years of age are digging in these mines, 4 years old. That's not right. An orphan. They make 20 cents a day, enough to buy 2 potatoes so that we can get our solar energy? That's wrong.
I'm happy to speak to that, given, you know, our company has chosen to use those panels. I fully understand and hear everything you're saying, and I've already notified our team in the last 10 minutes to look into it. So we're paying attention now. And after looking into it, if we continue to basically find what you're raising, then we will no longer use Longi in any other project. As far as the cost of it, just to kind of share one data point, the cost of these panels are similar to many of the other Tier 1 panel prices. So it's not that these were remarkably cheaper, and perhaps that might be the reason for it. That there's nothing kind of suspicious about that. But we will definitely look into it, and we want to make socially responsible decisions. So I appreciate you raising that very much.
Thank you.
And Pat, could you keep Glenn and the rest of us informed of that investigation, please?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I would ask Councilor Kaplan when she did this research.
Between last week's meeting and this week's meeting.
Was it before or after last Thursday?
After.
Okay, I'll accept that.
Right, any other, before I close the public hearing? I'll close the public hearing. Public hearing is closed. Councilors, other comments? So
I just wanted to, if I could, acknowledge, in addition to Glenn's effort in coming up to speed so quickly, and the Solar Committee and Gary Fortier, David Cole's work on this, and Tammy Moat, as well as Dan Higgins and his team at the school, who did a lot of research for us around rates and retail suppliers. And on his team was Monica, and here in City Hall, Stacy. These people did a tremendous amount of work and withstood dozens and dozens of emails from us over the course of the year to make this come to bear fruit. So thank you.
And if I might follow that, Mr. Chairman, I agree. Woody and his crew and our crew have done an incredible job. This is a great project. I just need to caution everybody to understand that because of the way we're doing this, we cannot advertise that we're using solar power. That's one of the things that we can't do. We are buying the billing credits from the solar producer. We are not legitimately using solar power in the city of Ellsworth, and we cannot claim that, or we'll be speaking an untruth.
If I could say something to that, Mr. Fortier, do you mind if I pipe in? Because I'm glad to raise that, and I think there's a lot of municipalities who've been doing contracts like this, and I worry sometimes they don't really know what they're buying, and I think that's exactly true. That you are not purchasing power from a solar facility, so you're not, and nor are you purchasing the renewable energy certificate, so you're not buying green power. That being said, you can say that you're facilitating the development of a solar power facility, and that is true. And so you just have to be, I think Mr. Fortier is right, you got to be careful about how you talk about it, but this program is designed and was enacted to facilitate the deployment of what people believe to be projects that will be good for the environment and reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So it is a statewide effort, but yes, you have to be nuanced in how you talk about it.
Thank you, Sarah.
And it is this 20-year contract and literally dozens of others that are being reviewed and have been signed by municipalities and private entities in Maine that are enabling the construction of these facilities. They will not get built without financing, and the financing will not come through without 20-year agreements.
So I just,
Mr. Chairman, before I shut off for the night, I didn't have a chance earlier. Councilor Moore, it's been a pleasure serving with you. Thank you for your service to our community in education, in city council, and friendship.
he's not allowed to speak, so.
Thank you, Gary.
So I would just comment, make one quick comment. I think the points that Councillor Kaplan made, I think certainly anyone listening at the state level who authored this and put this together should take that under advisement in terms of just creating parameters in the future. It's hard for municipalities at this level to deal with those more global issues, I think, and in crafting the original, that those are some things for the future that they might want to take into account. And I appreciate the response tonight in terms of, Pat, your willingness to take that back. It sounds like you've already done that with your company and listening to those concerns. So I think that's a positive step. So, councillors. Oh, I do have an email that just came through. So this is from Sandra Clausmeyer. I hope I pronounced your name correctly. It says, Chairman, does this contract limit the city's ability to pursue solar power use in the future? And Sarah, I'm going to ask you.
No, it's non-exclusive.
That's correct. It's non-exclusive, but it's you got to think about it in the future in the sense that you are committing to take, particularly this industrial road project, you're taking 100% of the billing credits that come out from it. So if you were to have a solar project that was what they call behind the meter, you're literally buying the electrons from the solar project, then you wouldn't need to take electricity from the grid, and your cost would go down. There is a scenario where you might be, as they say, out over your skis, where you purchase too many credits and you don't have a bill to apply them to. That being said, over time, there's a move towards electrification, electric cars, so maybe electric fleets, electric heating, all kinds of things that will demand more electric energy. So over time, there certainly could be a situation where you have enough demand where you could still take a solar project and take that power and then still, have enough bill to offset your credit. If you want to save room for a solar project, you are not entertaining yet the second contract, the Mariahville Road contract. And if that's something that you are intent on doing at this time and want to save room for and want to be taken into account when we get to that second contract, then obviously we can do our best to do that. But it does not, the contract in and of itself does not prohibit you from having or entering into a solar project by which you buy the power from a solar project in town.
And I'd just add that in our RFP process, we did ask the responders to look at and we reviewed proposals for solar panels put on city property. And through careful review with the subcommittee, we determined that was not as economically attractive for the city as this type of project, this net energy billing. That doesn't mean it might not be in the future, but just so you know, we examined that option, including the installation of panels at the old landfill. And it was not economic at that time.
But if we all look at the future of Ellsworth, Sarah brought up electric vehicles and the like, but let's look at our future. We've been talking for 10 years on a public safety building. We're talking about possibly more traffic lights, LED lighting, street lights. That's why this committee had recommended a couple months ago that we sign up for 90% of our load. We do about 5.4 million kilowatts a year, and we were targeting about 90% of that to give us a little buffer so that we could do energy efficiency projects, that we could look at LED lighting, that we could look at energy efficient air handlers at City Hall, heat pumps. So we tried to leave a little bit of a buffer there, thinking that we might be able to do that. So that's a good question. I think we've got it pretty well in hand.
I'd be remiss if I didn't say that you can now buy an all-electric vehicle with a range of over 250 miles for less than $30,000. I own one and have used the chargers in Ellsworth occasionally. I've owned it for 3 years. It's very reliable, and I'm very optimistic, especially for two-car families, that families down east will begin to adopt using an all-electric vehicle as a second car.
I agree.
So I do appreciate the question, and thank you for the clarification on that. Obviously, sitting here, I think whenever we're taking a vote that's going to be for 20 years, there's a certain level of responsibility we have to really be thinking through that and being as comfortable as we possibly can as we commit to that. So it's a great question. Councilors. Councilor Miller.
I watched the planning board with Pat applying all the way through, before we knew we were going to use Sunrays. And I've been really impressed with Pat and his team all the way through the process. Also, I just wanted to say, and I understand Councillor Kaplan's concerns, but the project's going to be built, and the credits are out there, and if we don't buy them, somebody else will.
Mr. Chairman, I move to authorize the city manager to enter an agreement in the city of Ellsworth and the Industrial Road Ellsworth Solar LLC company.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Councilman?
No.
Oh,
Voting.
you finished. All in favor? Opposed? On opposition? Motion passes. Thank you. And thank you to the committee.
One thought on this. I think that Councilor Kaplan raised a very important issue, and I think anything that we can do to help encourage the powers that are going to be putting this together to follow through and check that out is a very good thing to do.
Thank you all for your help. with this
Thank
process.
you.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night, all.
Thank you, everybody.
Good night.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you,
I'll get it. All right. Item 12, presentation on a community survey developed and administered by the Heart of Ellsworth, sponsored by myself.
Good evening. My name is John Stein. I'm proudly here as a board member of Heart of Ellsworth. Here just to present the findings and describe a little bit about why we did this survey. This was a public survey, and I'll just read, if you have filled out the survey, thank you very much. You've probably seen the introduction, which says, the goal is to identify a cohesive message outlining community priorities that will be shared with city councilors to inform their work and to assist in decision-making processes on issues that are important to our community. So Heart of Ellsworth is a nonprofit that operates to further Ellsworth downtown. I've been a board member for a few years now. So we didn't kind of start this survey. Let me back up. We started the survey sort of to further the efforts of a survey done by the City of Ellsworth called the City of Ellsworth Visioning Project, which was in December of 2015. We thought it had been a while, and it was a good time to make another effort to see what were the priorities for the citizens and businesses here in downtown Ellsworth. We were fortunately able to get results back from 123 people, which was a little more than half of the respondents from the 2015 survey done by the city. So this represents just over 10% of the people who were asked to take the survey, and just over 1.5% of Ellsworth's total population. The survey was open for 2 weeks between the last week of September and the first week of October, so very recent. Respondents were members of, or recipients of the Heart of Ellsworth newsletter, subscribers, people who were individually contacted by board members and volunteers. Respondents were composed of email recipients. They were bipartisan, wide age range, recent residents and lifetime residents alike, coming from a wide geographic range, from Green Lake, Winkapah Road, Christian Ridge Road, and historic core neighborhoods, and residential streets as well near the hospital. Again, the purpose was to, or is to, just like the purpose of Heart of Ellsworth, is to aid citizens living in downtown Ellsworth and all of Ellsworth, downtown businesses, residents, and city council as well, to communicate between all organizations who are active. You may know Heart of Ellsworth from some more conspicuous events like Taste of Ellsworth, the Cider and Cheese Festival, and some subtler events where we have hands in. Community conversations, which we've launched a few of over the last few years. The Meet the Candidates, where we do question and answer and meet the 4 candidates who are running for city council this year and last year. We're supporting Shop Local, Downtown Grants Program, which just culminated a couple months ago. The Green Plan we support as well, and a number of other organizations in town. So I'll just get right into some of the results. The categories of top priority, so the 3 most responded to priorities of the survey were intentional growth with 49 replies, physical infrastructure with 38 replies, and public services, 36 replies. So once we identified those top 3 priorities, the algorithms asked those respondents what were the top priorities in each of those categories. So in intentional growth, the top issue was for the City of Ellsworth supporting implementation of the Ellsworth Green Plan, a comprehensive list of recommendations intended to put Ellsworth on the path to becoming a sustainable green community. This specific result got 106 confirmed replies. In physical infrastructure, the top issue was to create a network of sidewalks connecting all downtown streets with amenities, improve connectivity by providing an increased opportunity for public walking on sidewalks, public restrooms, and to include wheelchair accessible curbs. That had 109 replies as well. And of the public services category, the top issue was citywide broadband access for all residents. During the time of COVID and likely years into the future, the city, businesses, and residents will benefit by increased connectivity. Currently, all education and all businesses are fully or nearly fully dependent on internet access, and that had 110 replies. So again, we were only able to get just over half of the respondents that the city collected 5 years ago. This was only open for 2 weeks. Obviously, most of these respondents were contacted either by cellular phone or online. In the future, we'd love to do more surveys where we have in-person questionnaires so that we could reach a wider variety of people and greater number of people. The original Ellsworth survey opened up to a lot of free answer questions, and so there was a lot of work to try to compile like responses so that restricted some sort of statistical significance. So we would love to open up the questions to a wider range. We obviously took a lot of the responses from the 2015 surveys and transposed them into this survey as well. The board members contributed their own suggestions for what responses could be included as well.
Councillors?
That is, yeah, that's the survey. Any questions?
So I just have a comment, and this was something that I had shared when this survey came out, so it's just, I just want to make it public. One is, I have been contacted, this was not conducted, as you have said, this was Heart of Ellsworth put this together, and I appreciate that. I think getting information from the community is always valuable. So it's great information. The fact that you took the time to put it together, put it out there, come to this meeting and present it is absolutely valuable information. At the same time, it's also important to understand the context of the survey, who participated, who didn't. And so it was something that when you made the decision to do it, it was from your organization putting it out. For example, the chamber wasn't involved, the city wasn't involved. So I think there's some value going forward in terms of perhaps getting a broader base to put together a survey. And then the other reflection that I had, I also think it's important to really look at, and this isn't, I'm not trying to criticize it at all, just for those who didn't see the survey, some of it was pre-selected in terms of ranking items that you had provided, and there were opportunities to add issues, but that ranking of things, I think that's where the broader coalition of the community could come together in terms of how to get that feedback from a wider community. We may find exactly the same things that you found. I think it's a great starting point, and so I do want to thank you for taking the time doing that, bringing this here. And the last question I have is just in terms of, is this the results? Are you disseminating that? Is that on the website? Is that available?
We will publish that on the website.
Okay.
This actually just, obviously, is a very recent survey. I do want to speak just a little bit to your
Sure,
comment.
please.
Yeah, well, I agree. As I said, we could have done a much better job of outreach. The most interesting part of this, of the results of the survey, was that they very closely reflected results from the city's survey done in 2015, which actually reflected results published in the strategic planning. I think that was over 15 years ago now. So we're seeing a lot of trends. This is sort of a quick take the pulse of as many people as possible to see, what their concerns are currently. Obviously, we're lacking in some statistical significance, but we can fairly easily see that, I'll just write off of the city's publication of the visioning project in 2015 published by the steering committee, that the things that people wanted to work on most supposedly were the downtown sense of community, a vibrant year-round community, big town amenities located in a small town, access to nature and riverfront. And the report goes on to mention waterfront development, walkability, and other things that we also found in our survey. So I think the important thing to note is that while this was done by Heart of Ellsworth, a relatively small group, and with relatively limited responses, we saw big reflections of what the city found 5 years ago. So it's important to continue to work on those core issues.
Councillor.
So on intentional growth, there's one that's for Water Street, reduce noise, increase safety, encouragement of development of green spaces. Are you talking in the industrial part where there's businesses already? And how would you propose that we could do something like that? Because you've got some businesses that are recently built and then some longstanding businesses like Maine Shellfish, for example, the Redemption Center, Mike's Country Store, et cetera. So how would you envision something like that to happen?
Yeah, well, I have my own personal views. I'm just speaking on behalf of Heart of Ellsworth. I think our response to the organization would be to continue working with groups like the Ellsworth Green Plan, and groups, other nonprofits, Frenchman Bay Conservancy, for example, who are looking at potential spots on the riverfront to develop and turn into year-round farmers markets, things like that. That can't quite happen in a vacuum, and those groups know that they need the support of the city council. And so we really we're not necessarily qualified to make those plans, but we want to contribute and do what Heart of Ellsworth does best, which is communicate between all those different organizations to really push forward those common goals that we're seeing. So I don't have the answer right now, and I'm sure it's a very complex answer if there is one. But if anything, the start is to start the conversation and get all those groups together in one room to talk about what the options are.
Thank you.
Was there any differentiation between like a demographic where people, for instance, I've lived in Ellsworth for 3 years, and then there's people who have lived in Ellsworth all their lives. When you looked at the responses, did you see any trends between people, recent residents and lifelong residents? Because it's fascinating what you said about how it mirrored the 2015 survey. I mean, is there like, did you divide that out, or you just sort of like?
We haven't, as far as I know, teased that out yet. All I have in front of me that I've seen from the survey results are the percentages of. We split up questionnaires into residents of Ellsworth who own businesses, residents who don't own businesses, and business owners who do not live in Ellsworth. Which I think we can pair with the same categories in that 2015 survey as well.
Okay.
That's a great question.
Yeah, and as I said in my committee report, Aaron from the Frenchman Bay Conservancy came to talk to us about expanding the river walk down that way. And they're looking at that, so there are plans going forward to try and do something with that area. So,
All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Item 13, Council Order Number 102000, presentation by Ellsworth Historic Preservation Commission on a Museum in the Streets project and approval to authorize the expenditure of $2,000 for this project, sponsored by the Planning Department.
I'm assuming the podium?
All yours.
Thank you. I'll try and be brief. The whole intention is to not just ask for funding or additional funds, but to ask and update you on the status of the project. As you may have known, we made a presentation about a year ago giving you an idea of what the plaques were going to be and where they were going to be located. At this point in time, we're waiting to get all of the information's been submitted. The plaques are going through proofing right now. We've actually spent the summer being industrious in reaching out to the city, especially Public Works and the Planning Department, to make sure that everybody feels comfortable with the locations and really the overall content of the signs. It's been a very successful endeavor, I think, and a great partnership, and we continue to appreciate the city's support. This, in these days, this is a project that creates an outdoor museum, and if everybody understands what these plaques do, where we have 19 locations that we're bringing all aspects of Ellsworth history together. It's a safe, and it's a safe activity, it's outside, it promotes walking, and it creates an educational opportunity. So this is a real win-win for everybody. the city's role not only has this, I am part of this committee. I was a former member for 9 years on the Historic Preservation Commission. I'm no longer on the commission. And in fact, other members of this group are business people, the Historic Society, as well as the Historic Commission. So it's a group that's stayed together since 2014. We've been working on this project. One of the aspects that the city has participated in they have committed $5,000, which actually was a compensation fund that was set up through a pole that was located on the main street. If you all remember, a large gray pole by Bangor Hydro was installed at the corner of Main and State Street. And so the Bangor Hydro understood how offensive this was to especially neighboring businesses, and they provided a fund to the city of Ellsworth. Part of that is now going towards this project. So that's, I think, was a wonderful thing that, we worked with Mickey Sumter many, many years ago. So that was a big help. We've additionally raised funds through the Hancock County Fund. We've received a grant, a $10,000 grant. We've gotten funds from local businesses. Our goal is to raise $26,000. At this point, we have $19,000 in hand. We have letters going out right now to local businesses in order to sponsor different plaques, and we still have plaques available for sponsorship. Our dilemma right now is that we're awaiting delivery of the plaques and the poles, which we've ordered. We have $2,000 as a remaining shortfall for this immediate need. The goal of our additional $7,000, of which this too would be a part of, is also to set up a maintenance fund to take care of the signs, of course, in the remaining years. So that's sort of the background of where we're at right now. The groups that we've been involved with, of course, the Historic Society, Heart of Ellsworth, many, many other groups have been part of this for a long time. Many members, actually, some have, Jeff Fitzgerald, our former planning director, was part of this effort. Darlene Springer, who's passed away, was a big part of our signage and photographs. So this project, even within the context of what we've been working with right now, has a big legacy. And I think we want to make sure that it's successful, and we want to honor those who've been a part of it.
Counsel?
Any questions at all, or?
My only question is the $2,000, where is that coming out of?
Teresa, you want to address that?
I'm surprised by the question.
I'm just asking what account?
I know. I think it's Public Works, I'm not sure.
So we're asking for $2,000 out of the Public Works account. We don't know what account or for what, we understand the reasoning. But money we haven't allocated or stipulated before, I'm understanding, correct?
Correct. This is not budgeted.
Non-budgeted account. Sounds like a noble cause, I don't doubt that. I think probably completed it would probably be nice. I'm taken a little aback that the thought process on where the money's coming from is pretty limited on our side.
Councilor Cook?
I was saying that I would donate the salary back to the budget. It never actually came out of the budget, so why not take it out of the $2,000 stipend that I'm supposed to get?
It's in the general fund. The issue is, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, $2,000, it's not a big number. My question is just around, if we're voting on something, whenever it has to do with any kind of allocation, we should know which account is coming out of, so that we can be accountable for that, regardless whether it's $2, $2,000, or $200,000. So that was the basis for the question. It's not to, I remember the presentation. I think it's a great idea. I think it's going to be a nice addition to the city, give great information for people, especially as they're walking around the community. So I'm all in favor of it. I was just curious in terms of which line item we were drawing from, so that the public would know and we would know.
Yeah, we have a certain amount of criteria and rules we have to follow, with our finance manager at the end of the year when we're audited has to answer questions, and we just can't pull it out of one rabbit's hat and give it to another one and say, whoops, that's okay now.
Can I just ask that perhaps we table it for this evening, and I'll meet with the city planner, as well as Lisa Soklovich and Jen, and we'll see if there is funds available and bring it back next month with an understanding as to where that money would come from.
Yeah, with accounts, normally with account numbers, it makes it much cleaner and easier to follow when it comes time to reconcile. Move to table.
Second.
All in favor? Motion's tabled, or the item's tabled. Item 14, public hearing and action on amendments to the City of Ellsworth Code of Ordinances, Chapter 36, General Assistant Ordinance. All you.
Good evening. Bettina House, General Assistance Administrator. Minimal change to the ordinance. Here for any questions you guys have, if any.
Can you just give a summary so the community knows?
Sure.
You don't have to read it.
Yeah, it's okay. I'll just go over the minimal changes. So every year, the state puts out the maximums that a client would receive, and it fluctuates in amounts. And this year, there was an increase in the overall maximum of $18 per individual. There was also an increase in housing for $4. This is per person, per household. And then we had an increase in food for $2.32 per individual. It's very minimal.
Thank you. Councilors?
Mr. Chairman, move to approve the amendments.
Hearing.
Oh, public hearing. Thank you. Thank you, thank you.
For that.
Open the public hearing. Hold that thought. Public hearing is open. Anybody from the public? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. Now you make it.
Continuing.
Now that I've been corrected again.
Mr. Chairman, move to approve the amendments to the Ellsworth Code of Ordinances, Chapter 36, General Assistance Ordinances as presented.
Second.
You have a motion and a second. Further discussion?
Just a quick question, just for the record. Is it the state who determined the increased amount of money?
That is correct.
And not locally,
That is correct.
just for the record?
All in favor? Unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 15. Council Order Number 102001, discussion and action on approving the fiscal year July 1st, 2020 to June 30th, 2021 dues assessment for the Hancock County Planning Commission.
I believe we have a presenter here.
it's nice to be able to see the procedure a few times before, and then you can just come up. Hello, it's nice to meet you, Ellsworth. My name is Jared Gillette. I'm the new Executive Director at Hancock County Planning Commission. I prepared a short handout presentation that I believe was included in the packets. It has this nice cover of historical photo of Ellsworth. And I'll just sort of go through it because this is a great time as well for me to introduce myself and where the agency is at today. So I'm going to start off with just talking about the current status of Hcpc. Currently, since we've had a relaunch starting on August 17th was my first day, we're doing the comprehensive plan for Orland. We're doing the comprehensive plan for Brooksville. Brooklyn, the chair of their select board, contacted me to request a data pack from the state to begin comprehensive planning in the spring. We did put out a response to Tremont for proposals around comprehensive planning. I'll be presenting to their select board next Monday. Now, regarding transportation planning, Maine DOT has actually asked us to be a pilot project for using what's called ESRI story mapping, which is an immersive method of using multimedia to communicate geospatial and technical data to the everyday public to be used as a means of assessing extreme weather impact on the transportation infrastructure of Deer Isle and Stonington. I've also been voluntold that I will be the Scudic and Blackwood Scenic Byways coordinator for this region. I'm actually happy to do it. Transportation planning is more of my wheelhouse, and it's something that I really enjoy doing. As well as now, families and parents of school children and school departments are actually contacting our office to start talking about safe routes to school and pedestrian safety in school zones. Tremont was another particular town. We are also working with Down East Acadia Regional Tourism, and that's working on scenic byway promotion and enhancements through story mapping, which covers not only just municipalities, but also the organized and unorganized territories of Hancock County. And some projects that we have in the work are developing a regional GIS database, which has data that is usable at a scale or to a level of fineness that's beneficial to this region particularly. There is data available that you can get from Maine GIS. There is data that you can get from global sources, but it doesn't have the sort of fine level of detail that becomes beneficial when you want to do a project related to either land use planning, transportation planning. A lot of the land trusts are also working on this. And then we are in the works talking with various agencies around a regional recreational plan. And these are things that have been done in other jurisdictions that bring together many municipalities and regions to enhance not only tourism, but healthy lifestyles for residents within that region. So to give you a little bit about me, my professional experience, currently I'm the executive director. I come to you from Calais. I was at Washington County Council of Governments where I was transportation and regional planner. I worked in New Brunswick as their environmental planner and landscape architect for the Southern New Brunswick Planning Commission. I was a science teacher for Maine Indian Education for 3 years, and then I taught for 2 years before that as well. And I also bring international experience. I worked in Seoul, Korea for the City of Seoul's planning department in an experimental planning office, which actually I think can speak to some of the topics that Heart of Ellsworth was bringing up, which is we were working together to improve the environmental outcomes of heavily industrialized areas. There is a means to combine both industrial use as well as environmental protection. My education, my Master of Landscapes Architecture is from Seoul National University in Korea. I did that in Korean. I speak Korean. And my undergraduate was in community design and urban design from Dalhousie. I also studied chemistry and biochemistry. I was going to be a pharmacist, but then I didn't like counting to 30 and 90 and multiples of 5. And I had to take an elective, and I realized, hey, I like this planning stuff. It's kind of no offense, I love pharmacy. Don't get me wrong. It just wasn't for me, okay? I'm sorry.
He is a pharmacist.
I loved it. I mean, I don't regret it at all. It helps me out a lot still to this day. But I just, just wasn't for me. So that's a bit about me. professional toolbox that I'm bringing to Hancock County Planning Commission is, as you know, this was a planning office. It did a lot of comprehensive environmental, land use, and transportation planning. But I'm also trained as a landscape architect, so I'm also bringing a lot of background in technical drawing, visualization of data, statistical analysis is something that I'm a bit of a numbers geek. And then working with mapping and GIS. And unfortunately, my public speaking is not so great today, but I usually shut down after 6 o'clock. I have a 7 and a 2-year-old, so my sleep patterns are influenced by that. And a lot of caffeine. So I also want to talk to you today about the goals and visions that I have for Hancock County Planning Commission and what I bring to it from my experience. And I'm really interested and keen on heritage planning and design. And what that is that's planning and that is programming that preserves what I think is really special about the place that we live in. You talk about living in Hancock County because we're kind of safe from COVID, so to speak. Oh my God, that's not real wood. But what I really value is the culture and the traditions that we have. We are a place that has beautiful architectural inventory and assets. We're in a very awesome historic building, and as an architect, these are things that I like. But more than just providing a good community and a good culture, they also increase tax revenues because you have higher valuations on properties. It increases tourism, and also it increases and preserves your local culture. I also bring a lot of interest and background in economic development, which is CDBG, which is another service that we provide in Hancock County, not just to, all the other towns, but Ellsworth is a city in Hancock County. We're here to help anyone and everyone, not just government officials, but members of the public as well. We're here to provide technical assistance on that. I've got kids, and I like my kids to be able to have the lifestyle that I had, which was walking and biking to school, and I want them kids to be able to get to school safely. So that's another area that I'm really interested in, especially the transportation planners. How do we have safe infrastructure for kids to be able to not have to be driven to school or take a bus? Not that I have anything against cars or buses, but bikes are fun. So here's a real question. Why should Ellsworth consider paying membership dues, even though I'm asking you very late in the budget cycle? And I know our timing was off this year. They didn't hire me until August 17th. Hcpc didn't even know if they were going to be a thing until around May, once the accountant said, nope, things are in order, it's going to be okay. So what I can provide for Ellsworth is support to the city planner. We're a small profession in the state of Maine. There's not a lot of us. We all kind of know each other, and we all support each other. And as much as it seems like it's not a hard job, there is times where I do have to call and rely on other people. And so membership dues, it's a retainer where I am on call for the city, and I deal mostly with select board city councilors, city managers, any employee and member of the public. You can call up Hcpc, you have a retainer, and I can provide technical assistance to you. And that's going to get you dedicated GIS support. And so that's me being able to do analysis and visualizations, which, yes, you probably have GIS in-house. There's never enough hours in the day to get through all the projects.
So
I'm running out of time, okay. Well, that's me. The other thing, too, is 121 versus 71. Thank you. I will stop talking.
Mr. Jim, so young man, you started work for this place in August.
Yes.
So it's August, September, October. You're now standing there, wonderful resume. Not much of it. And if I remember right, that place was virtually non-existent, hasn't been doing anything for the last year, 2 years?
18 months.
Okay. Well, we at the City of Ellsworth have a full-time planner, we have a full-time code enforcement office. We have GIS that seems to function well. And I know many years ago we stopped paying dues and then paid dues again. And at this point, in pretty much of an unknown quantity, I, for one, wouldn't be in favor of signing up until we know what we're getting into. I see a lot of unknowns here, and I think you need, and being part of an old down Easter, I'd like to see a little bit of track record before I sign up for the horse.
So just read one comment that's come in from Gary Fortier regarding the membership with HCPC. I suggest that Ellsworth enter a comp plan revision soon to be able to task certain issues that HCPC is strong on and have our staff and volunteers tackle what they are strong on. Makes sense and will allow a finished and appropriate plan to emerge. I've been the city's rep to the HCPC and will continue until told different by the council.
Can I, just one thing, we cut him off right before he was getting to the end of the fees. So if we are non-members, so we don't agree to join at this point for the $14.50, your hourly rate is, we can still get your services. Your hourly rate is $121,
That is correct.
and then as members, your hourly rate for the same service would be $71.
That is correct.
Okay.
77, sorry. It's
77.
And I'd also like to state too, with the membership dues, you know, we have what's billable hours and then we have what's called member services. And so member services are any project that's up to 2 to 3 hours. You know, if you ask me to make a map and it's something that I can do in under 2 hours, you know, that's included in the package. It also includes on the call, anytime support for anyone in Ellsworth.
Councilor Blanche.
I agree with Councilor Phillips, and I'd also like to, before we proceed, get the take of Jan Newman, our Economic Development Director, to get her opinion on this, whether she would need it or not.
I can speak to that because when we received this, I did reach out to Jana and had a conversation with her specifically about HCPC. And although admittedly she wasn't sure because she hasn't been in the office since they've been back up and running, she said in the past they did provide some useful services to the city, but she was reluctant to say at this point that the service is necessary for us to join, and her comfort level was to wait for the new budget cycle. She would budget for it, and that would give them time to get up and running and make sure that they're actually able to produce and provide the services that they're claiming that they're going to be able to provide. And like Councillor Phillips said, you know, give them an opportunity to kind of show that they can do what they say they're going to do, and then. But beyond that, she was in favor of, you know, of eventually, if they are able to come through, to join as a support. And I also did speak with Teresa, the planner, and she's very much in favor of it. She's used their services in the past and believes that it can be very beneficial to the city going forward. So.
Thank you.
Could I add to that? I've used Hancock County Planning Commission since the late 80s. They're an excellent organization. I know that they had this awful financial thing happen, but I have total faith in them, and I could use them in the planning office. I know we have a code officer and a planner and economic developer. I recognize that. I have shoreline zoning maps that are coming to you soon, but I can't make them. I don't know how to do GIS. Our GIS person is Jana. She's not here. When she does come back, she does economic development. So we're going to need someone to do those services. Hancock County already has all our maps on their files. They already have them. And so we'd have to pay extra to get them and so forth. If we do, we wouldn't. They also, someday we will approve trying to get a comprehensive plan done in the city. We haven't had one done since 2004. Whether we hire them or not as our consultant, they still can offer us services to be helping with that comprehensive plan. Because the city planner cannot do all of the planning. That's why cities and towns use regional planning commissions.
So I'm in agreement with what Councilors Phillips and Blanchette have said. The thing I would ask is that, much like you stepping into the position 3 months in, this is the first presentation that we've had, and so what I would hope is that there would be the opportunity for us to digest this as a city, to really look at it as a member of the council. What I would want to hear from the city is, what are our needs? Do we have needs coming up in this fiscal year that's going, as you just said, I haven't heard any of that yet. So if you can allow us the time to look at that, considering that we're already into our fiscal year, and have us revisit this maybe in a couple of months so that we can say, yep, we're going to have a need this year, we're willing to pay the dues for this year or not, then I think that that's a reasonable approach in terms of where we stand. I just don't think that we're in a place, for me, to not understand what the needs are to pay for something. I think there is probably absolutely a use for that down the road, but I don't, sitting here tonight, I don't know what that is. So to approve dues for something that we may not have any need for, I'm not comfortable with that at this point. Other comments?
Well, thank you very much.
What, Councillors,
Anything
other
else?
questions, or?
Is that a call for a motion? Move to deny the request to fund the HCPC this year.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous. Motion's denied. Item 16, Council Order Number 102002, request of the Finance Director for approval to encumber certain appropriation accounts.
Good evening, Jennifer Merchant, Finance Director. I'm here this evening with a couple of annual requests. The first one is to encumber funds from unfinished projects from FY19 into FY20.
Just a question I have, in Councilor Grindle, you might be able to help too. Is this just kind of routine accounting in terms of
Yep.
it's just moving?
Yep, this
things
is
forward?
absolutely just, it's routine. It's mostly just unfinished projects. Primarily, it's capital requests, and then generally some departments ask to carry some things forward.
Mr. Chairman, move to approve the request of the Finance Director to encumber certain appropriation and assigned fund balance accounts as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous. Item 17, Council Order Number 102003, request of the Finance Director for approval to adjust the FY 2020 estimated appropriations and revenues.
This second request is to, as you just said, adjust the estimated appropriations and revenues for FY20. It's just another standard request.
Councilor?
Mr. Chairman, move to approve the request of the Finance Director to adjust the FY 2020 estimated appropriation and revenues as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous.
Thank you.
Item 18, Council Order Number 102004, authorization of the interim city manager to execute a contract with Oak Point Associates to perform a condition assessment, gap analysis, and feasibility study regarding future needs of the Hancock County Technical Center. So we can give some background information. Do you want me to start? I'll start, and then Councilor Grindle will fix everything I say. So as you may recall, this has been a project that has been delayed because of COVID. We were well on the way, the committee that was working on this, to, it started with the need around an economic need. And if you recall, we had a targeted TIF funding to do this project. It is both something that the business community through EMBC was promoting, the school system, and it's really looking at the existing facility to determine whether or not that facility can be improved as is, or if it really needs total revamping, rebuilding to accommodate the student population who attends the programming. And much of that programming, as you all know, is about career preparation, college preparation. It really is a very diverse program. And by moving forward in terms of having a facility that's conducive for that, there's a real, one, that the facility is in woeful need of upgrading. So that's what the committee was tasked with. The school board met last week and endorsed the recommendation of the committee to award this contract. The contract award is within the limits that we established as a council when we voted on it. So at that point, we voted on a maximum amount of TIF funding for this. We vetted different proposals and arrived at Oak Point to give the award. So that's where it stands, and what we would be voting on this evening is to authorize the city manager to negotiate that contract to its completion so that the work can get underway. I would just add also that they have developed a plan that it involves very much community involvement, and they have developed a way to do that, understanding the conditions that we're in related to COVID. So questions, comments?
I just would add that the contract is currently, the initial version was forwarded to me and sent it on to the city's legal. They had some requests for changes or some fairly insignificant changes, and it's since been sent back to Oak Point, and we're waiting for their either approval or disapproval of those changes requested on behalf of our legal. So that's that's unfortunately why you don't have the actual contract in front of you tonight.
Mr. Chairman, move to authorize the interim city manager to execute a contract with Oak Point Associates to perform a conditional assessment, gap analysis, feasibility study regarding future needs of the Hancock County Technical Center.
Second.
Motion in multiple seconds and thirds and fourths. Any further discussion? All those in favor? It's unanimous. And item number 19, discussion on the use of Spring Street as an extension to the biking walking path, sponsored by Councillor Blanche. And so that's...
Sounds like a good idea, Mark. I move to adjourn.
I will turn that over to Councillor Blanche.
In January, the Ellsworth City Council voted to accept a $25,000 Maine DOT Planning Partnership Initiative grant to fund the Bike Pedestrian Trail Feasibility Study to connect the city's rail trail with the Sunrise Trail. It would be an extension of the city's rail trail, non-motorized path. The grant required a 50% local match, which the council authorized in January. And in May of this year, we approved the contract with VHB Engineering and authorized the expenditure of our share of $25,000 for them to study the path extension. I'm on the committee, as is Councillor Grindle, to study this. And one of the things that came up at the last meeting, VHB would like to know what our intention is with Spring Street now, whether to abandon it and turn it into a path, whether to abandon sections of it. It seems the most common sense would be to abandon from Park Street to just shy of Main Street. It's an unused, mostly, it's an underused, mostly unpaved old road that has many ownership issues between old deeds, railroad right-of-ways, and city property. The section of Spring Street from Birch Avenue to Park Street would remain as it is now. The path would go on the north side, the upper side of the railroad track in that short section. At Park Street, it would cross and continue what is now down the dirt section of Spring Street. It would stop just shy of Alan Blueberry's railroad crossing that they use every year and maintain. From that crossing to Main Street, it's roughly 100 feet, 120 feet. It would become a multi-use path, and that's a term that the state and VHB use. Other than that, it would be then closed to vehicular traffic. The path would cross Main Street, more than likely go above the cement retaining wall of Main Community Foundation, and then out the existing tote road behind their building to connect up with the Sunrise Trail. The proposal also includes the path to come down next to Merrill Furniture, between Merrill and LL Bean and Key Bank, and include new lights and a working pedestrian signal, crossing signal at that intersection. So that's the proposal in a nutshell, but they would like to know what our feelings are on Spring Street, so they can use it in their planning.
I just want to read one comment that came in from Sandra Klausmeyer. Chairman, I am attending the City Council meeting to hear the conversation on item 19, walking path. I continue to be appreciative and inspired by the work the city does for and on behalf of its residents. And she has attached a picture, which I forwarded the email to all of you so you can see it. This picture of my home at 21 Lincoln Street abuts the track. My property less than a quarter of an acre, and my house sits only about 28 feet from the center of the tracks. My two main egresses face these tracks. The portion of my yard between the front of my house and the tracks is part of the consideration set. I would like to share my concern as this project moves and potentially significantly impacts my daily life, value of my home, and much more. Thank you for listening, and pardon the Halloween decorations my children hung, although those were very nice.
So that's me, by the way.
Oh.
Sorry, yes.
Well, it said
I
you were,
wasn't sure when I
it
was
said you
allowed
were
to talk.
in the room, and I'm thinking,
That's weird.
How?
I know, sorry. I didn't know before or after the gavel, sorry.
oh, no, I'm
Just
glad
thought
you're
I'd
here.
share.
So
It's
I
fine.
read, did I read that?
That was well done.
Thank you. Do you want to add?
Do I?
Yeah,
Yes,
please,
okay.
so that everybody
Sorry.
listens. Sorry about that. If
No,
I had
that's
known,
great.
I
No.
would have turned my head.
Perfect.
I'm glad we didn't embarrass ourselves.
That's
No,
that's what I'm here for.
they think that I don't know what I'm doing.
No, thank you very much, and this is actually my first meeting that I've ever attended, so this has actually been really, I said it, because I typed it here, it really is exciting, everything that the city is doing, and I am in full support of, making Ellsworth a walking city. I use, and just did today, use the bike path with my kids on our lunch run/bike. And I love it, and I really hope that we get to extend it. The picture that I shared is my home, so I am actually sitting, I don't know, you probably all know Lincoln Street, but I am in the section that you shared where I kind of sit in the middle of where the unpaved portion of Spring Street is. And I have the opportunity to see all the bikers and the kids and some of the cars try to make their way through there. It's a beautiful road, and I'm certainly love the idea of using Spring Street. And of course, I have a personal part in that because that is my home.
Sorry, I do a lot of public speaking, but not about personal things. That's 28 feet from the bay window to the center of the tracks. And I gotta be honest, I was surprised when I learned that that was part of the consideration set. I know that I am told they have to consider everything, and trust me, I get that, totally get that and appreciate that. They're doing their job. That would, if the path were there, it would truly come to the front of my home. What you can't see there are the two main doors that we walk in and out of. That's the main portion of our house. We would step out onto that path. This may all be things you know, and so I recognize that, and I'm sure you've all seen the studies. But I just wanted to express that. Like I said, I love everything that's being done and ask for support in using Spring Street. That's all.
You spoke at the meeting when they were doing it online.
Yes, I did.
And have they
It's
been
a
in
lot more intense in person, sorry.
Have they been in contact with you?
No, I've
Discussed
heard
with you?
nothing. No.
Okay, I didn't, because I remember you speaking.
No.
So, one, I want to thank you. I'm glad you're here. Again, I'm sorry I didn't.
No,
realize
thank
that
you. No, I'm
It's
terribly
very
sorry.
helpful, the picture really is very helpful to really get a sense of what you're talking about. So I appreciate that, and the fact that you took the time to come here and
Absolutely.
share that. It's important, so thank you.
Well, and I've shared also before, I haven't been involved in city projects, and while I wouldn't want this to be the way I get involved, hearing about the Heart of Ellsworth and the Green Plan are all things that just make my heart sing. And so any way that we can make Ellsworth more walkable, more family-friendly. I heard the gentleman talk about walking their kids to school. I've tried it now twice to get my youngest over to daycare. Just crossing that main road is stressful, and we won't be doing it anymore. So I love all of this. It's just knowing how to be involved. So that's a separate topic. But anyway, thank you guys.
Thanks.
Teresa Lexu, your city planner. This study shows several alternatives to how to make these two trails connect. One of them is horrifying. It's in front of your house. They're not going to pick that one. But they do have to study all of them. And I think why Mark's bringing this up is that it would be good when we are considering all these alternatives to know what the city council feels about Spring Street. If you could give us your thoughts about, Mark laid out, do we keep this part open to vehicular traffic and the rest of it not? And so I think if we could talk about that, so I could bring that back to our committee, and that's why you want to do this, right? Like,
Correct.
what do you guys think about Spring Street, and where should it be closed? Should it be closed? Where should it stay open? So we can consider it, we're considering the different scenarios.
Well, Mark, do you know the recommendations from the business that we're paying for where they would like to close Spring Street, or?
They haven't officially made a
No,
recommendation
they
yet.
haven't made an official one, but is
No.
there a
I mean, one of
recommendation about Spring Street and specifically? Yeah,
No.
okay.
They, right now, they're going through the motions of officially looking at all possibilities. I mean, one of the possibilities, when they get to Main Street, is going up the hill and then using Beals Avenue.
Right, yes,
As part of the path.
I remember that.
To me, that's just a non-starter with all the traffic on Beals. You might as well, put the kids down the middle of Main Street.
They were gonna close the entrance on High Street to Beals.
Make it a dead end.
Yes, yeah, Beals Avenue would be dead-ended at
Yes.
High Street under that scenario.
I have 25 emails coming through from Beals. Thanks. I agree. I mean, I would not be supportive of a plan that does to you what that plan would do. I mean, all you have to do is look at the picture and the photo and see that. So that's, for me, Spring Street, it's kind of the same thing, is that hearing what the recommendations are and understanding if there are any kind of similar impacts on residents. I would want to know that kind of information before approving.
From Park Street through to Allen Blueberry, there are no driveways. There is a driveway on Lincoln Street that over the years, they've kind of extended it and so on, and brought an opening into the path, onto Spring Street. But the original driveway is on Lincoln.
Yeah.
Do we even know where the meets and bounds are of these things, or the actual railroad right-of-way? Has it ever been surveyed? Does anybody know?
We know where the railroad right-of-way is, but it conflicts with old deeds, old descriptions in deeds. Some of the deeds say that Spring Street is nothing but a driveway that starts at Birch Street and ends before you get to the old M.A. Clark.
I'd say by this lady's description, sounds just like that's what it is. It became her driveway.
Yeah, I stopped at a house this past weekend and talked with her. And boy, she's correct. In fact, she might be a little generous on that measurement.
So,
I think that that measurement may come up and scrape the windowsills.
at that point, can you go on the, where would it be? Is it north side or east side of it?
Yes,
There?
yes, she is on the north, the upper side, north side. The path in front of her house would be on the other side of the track.
Or you would be in Spring Street, because it's the tracks and embankment in Spring Street.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
yeah.
quite a ways from her front
Some
door.
of you have seen this, I haven't seen anything, I have no idea what we're talking about. For me to sit here and make an intelligent decision, especially at 9:30 at night, it's gonna be quite difficult. I'd like to see more in writing or pictures or some idea of more physically there to make a decision than to sit here and, I think the last thing I wanna do is, if you step in the doorstep, the car's going by 95 miles an hour, it's really not that pleasant.
Uh,
Yeah,
No, the road is not on,
oh, I know.
you and I, you may know. She lives in Del Luce's old house,
Yeah, it's not,
Okay,
you know,
yeah, I know.
so.
I think the
Those of
name-
us of a certain age
That's a
know.
history
That's my
lesson
birthday.
for you.
Yes.
Gee, you remember that?
G.D. Luce.
Yeah. So in terms of, can there be more feedback gathered so that we can continue?
Absolutely. We have another meeting coming up in November. I don't know if the date has been,
It hasn't been set yet.
I just wanted to add, though, I think we're all in favor of not having the trail go past her house. Just, yeah, we definitely want that option off the table and use Spring Street instead, and at least at that point.
Okay,
okay?
all right. Wait for it. There's only one person in this room that can make the next motion.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, wow.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? We're adjourned.